All right, welcome to our new CBS Sports Show. Yes, that's right. House of Champions. YouTube friends, drop in your comments and questions in the chat. Make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons like this. Bang! Smash it right now. Don't wait. Don't wait for the show to begin. Smash that like and subscribe button right now as we get set for a banger episode previewing this week's Champions League fixtures. We got a great show ahead today. Matchday 6 is right around the corner in the Champions League. I got my partners in crime with me. James Benj, there he is right there. Nice cheesy smile. I like to hear it. Jonathan Johnson, Nigel Rio-Coker, nice to see you in the morning. Look at those smiles. James Benj, I've seen you since Brooklyn, man. How you been? How was your weekend?
Yeah, I got ill. Brooklyn finished me. I blame Nigel. Honestly, if you have someone
blame Nigel for what?
Chatting rubbish so near you, it's obviously toxic.
Good one. I like that.
Nigel, how you doing, man?
Before you got ill and bored because of watching Arsenal. Bore off.
Right.
Anyway, it's great to see you guys again.
How was your weekend?
It was good. Very good. Very simple, but I enjoyed it. Watched some games, watched some great football. I'm sure we're going to get into it. How about that Real Madrid game, eh?
Yeah, cracking game. Interesting one as well. JJ, good to see you. Thanks for joining us yesterday while the other two boys took a day off. How are you, man?
Yeah, doing very well. Thanks. Looking forward to everything that the week has to offer. And I think if James was feeling ill, I mean, it's not surprising when you try to go shot for shot with Nigel Rio-Coker at the hotel bar while we're in Brooklyn.
You guys are spreading some very bad rumors right about now. Let's.
But are they untrue? Are they untrue?
Show. That's the after.
Are they unfounded?
I can definitely see an After Dark show coming at some point because there's a lot of comments that we are starting to see not only on this platform but also on our social media platforms that people they crave the After Dark show. It's going to come at some point, Nigel Rio-Coker. There's no doubt about it. Be careful what you say on the After Dark show. It is R-rated for everybody out there. Let's get into it. Matchday 6 is starting tomorrow. Some cracking games to look forward to. But before we get into it, I want to just show you the teams who are already qualified in the Champions League. There are so many teams already, Matchday 5 through, that are there. James Bench, you've got an interesting statistic as well as we were talking about some of the failures that are not on this list.
Are we doing that one now? I'm very pleased with
right
this.
Now.
Well, it's been floating around. I can't say it's my own statistic, but for all this talk of excellence and who might reach the knockout rounds, there are two teams competing for a much bigger slice of history than just reaching the last 16, which 16 teams do every year. The record for the worst groups, 20 teams have had a group stage campaign in the current format of the Champions League where they have picked up no points. The team that have done so with the worst goal difference, and therefore you could argue the worst team the group stages. Go on, Nigel. Do you know who the worst team is? Incorrect. It's not Rangers yet. Dinamo Zagreb are currently the worst team in group stage history with a record with a minus 19 goal difference. As it stands,
the time that they got absolutely ruined by Lyon, about 9-0 or something.
It was indeed the time they got ruined. They had a horrible group with Lyon, with Real Madrid. And to be fair, I think it's fair to say the two teams that might do it this year have also had horrible groups. So Victoria Pilsen stand on minus 17 goal difference before they face a Barcelona team that I think might be coming into this in a bit of a bad mood. Mm-hmm. So if they lose by 3 goals, they take the record. Rangers, if they just lose, they will have the record for the worst Champions League group stage, which would be quite bad for Scotland, I would say.
I was close. Who are Rangers playing, by the way, James, just so everyone knows?
Ajax at home.
Yeah, Ajax.
But equally, if Rangers win 5-0, they're in the Europa League.
5-0.
If they do, I'm not saying they will
score a goal. Well, let's not even get into that. Let's just be realistic about it. But I was right, basically. So when Rangers lose to Ajax this week, they're going to be the worst ever team.
At least until Pilsen beat them the following day.
Yeah, and Pilsen beat them the following day. All right, there's a lot to discuss, so we're going to start right now, and we're going to begin with Group D. Obviously, Tuesday's fixtures right around the corner goes A through D, but we're going to begin with Group D because it's wide open. Tottenham sitting at the top of the table with 8 points, Sporting on 7 points, Frankfurt on 7 points, Marseille on 6 points. Sporting at home to Eintracht Frankfurt, Marseille at home to Tottenham Hotspur. I guess, James, I'll start with you. I mean, this is a must-win game for Spurs. They surely must be favourites going into this game. But how on earth do you approach this game? JJ, I want you to follow very quickly behind James as to why you think Marseille can get the job done against Spurs. Go ahead, James.
I mean, it's a fiddly one, isn't it? In a way, it's the sort of assignment that suits Spurs where, yeah, I mean, they will want to win and get top spot, but obviously a draw would take them through, I believe. But, Marseille have to go for the throat here. They have to push that line up high. They have to apply pressure on the ball even more so than they do normally. And we know when teams play like that Harry Kane and Heung-min Son can tear them to pieces on the counter-attack. Between that and, the sort of set plays that we saw Tottenham make a lot of hay from against Bournemouth at the weekend, those are your reasons to feel optimistic. Equally, this is a team that very nearly lost to Bournemouth. It's a team that's lost to Newcastle and is really struggling for form of late. I think that Spurs have got enough in the tank to get the job done. I can't see them making it easy on themselves too. And I'll throw the floor over to JJ, but I think Marseille, whatever we say about them, I'm sure they're going to go about things in a fearless and energetic manner.
Yeah, and they'll be roared on by a full Stade Velodrome, of course, but also the margin for error now for this Marseille side is so much lower than it was a couple of weeks ago. I mean, they really, took the pressure off with those back-to-back wins over Sporting Lisbon, and then suddenly their domestic form has gone to pot, and you're actually looking at a potential crisis if Marseille don't win here. And even if they draw, they can't rely on that to keep their European hopes alive. So the stakes are really, really high for Igor Tudor and his players. There's reports coming out that the players are once again questioning Tudor's methods, which happened on the eve of the season getting underway. So, it really feels like there is a lot riding on this, and either it's going to be sink or swim, you feel, for Marseille, and those fans, making it a really hostile atmosphere in the Velodrome could be the difference, because, Marseille needs something to level up the playing field against this Spurs side, because if you look at them on paper, they can't really compete. Yes, they have some quality players in certain positions, but generally across the board, this Spurs team is much stronger than Marseille's. And also, I think Marseille will be, hoping for the fact that there is some sort of influence in the fact that Antonio Conte won't be on the sideline for Spurs either.
Not a great setup, I would say. You're also missing Kulusevski, and you're also missing Richarlison, if I'm not mistaken. They're touch and go, obviously, for this game. But Nigel, I mean, Tottenham
Kulusevski trained today. That's what I was told. He's not trained today, so he's probably going to be out.
Definitely out. I mean, Nigel, you'd have to say it's been a bit of a disappointing campaign for Spurs, but if they get through, therefore you would have to say it's a success. So it doesn't really matter how you perform. As long as you get through this group stage into the knockout stages, it gives Tottenham an opportunity to use the World Cup break, to obviously use an opportunity to rejuvenate yourself, get ready to go for the knockout runs. So all they need to do, Tottenham, to make this a successful campaign is just get through, no matter how.
Yeah, I think Tottenham fans will be very happy. To be fair, if I'm honest, we haven't exactly seen exciting, amazing football from Tottenham from the start of this season. They haven't really played fantastic football, but there hasn't been a tremendous amount of moaning or groaning by Tottenham fans. They're fine with it. The reality of it is, if you keep winning, everything is fine. And that's reality. They're winning. They're getting the job done. Been some close calls. Yes, they lost to Newcastle, like James said. They made a very difficult game of it this weekend against Bournemouth, but they came back and won the game. So I think for Tottenham fans, they will take it where they're at right now in the league. And also if they make it through to the next round. I think James hit the nail on the head. Marseille have to go for it, and so did Jonathan. And if they do, it plays in Tottenham's hands perfectly well, because that's what Tottenham like. Teams coming onto them. And when you've got Harry Kane and Son Min-Heung to break on them, and, they've got some great other players as well. Session probably could play part of it as well. And Session's done very well under Antonio Conte. And I think for me, when you look at the manager itself and Antonio Conte, these are the moments that suit him best. Backs against the wall. It's literally like a cup final. I can't think of many managers being able to be in the dressing room. Yes, he won't be there on the touchline, but I'm sure he'll be nearby and able to give a team talk where it could really fire this team up, knowing what's at stake. And I think if anything, probably Jonathan could add more to it than me, but from watching Tottenham and a Spurs point of view with the manager and everything, I feel that this game suits him to a T. This is the moment where he can really show the motivational side of Conte, and these are the moments that Conte likes. You look at Conte as a manager and as a person. He likes that underdog mentality. He likes that backs against the wall.
But is he going to be able to transmit that not being on the touchline? I mean, it is. You're right. It's the kind of atmosphere he's absolutely going to thrive in. But is he going to feel a bit powerless?
I don't think so, because when you look at Conte, Jonathan, he's the type of manager that the coaching staff around him are very similar to him. That's it. He's not going to have a coaching staff member that doesn't have that desire, that hurt, that fighting characteristic, that everything. He won't keep someone around him that's not like him around him. So I think he's going to have that coaching staff fired up. and they're just going to be a great representation for him. And nowadays, when managers really do get so-called banned and suspended, there's always a phone or an earpiece where the manager's saying everything that needs to be said. But I think
a laundry basket to get them in the dressing room.
Don't start putting out conspiracy theories out there now. Let's be careful. But yeah, I really do. I think that this game will suit Tottenham. And I think from the result they got this weekend, I feel that they can get the job done.
Hey, JJ, just real quickly on Marseille and their home form. The last 2 home games, if I'm not mistaken, they lost against Lens and Ajaccio. I believe they're 2 home games. Like, what's the deal with the home form for Marseille? I mean, that place, obviously, they've had their issues with discipline issues with the fans in particular. But realistically, that should normally be a fortress for them when it comes to domestic and also European competition. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, to be honest, you kind of expect some of the more disappointing results to come when the fans haven't been in place. So, them turning things around after the conceding that early goal against Sporting, I would have actually reasoned I would expect them to lose that more than more of the games where they're playing in front of their own fans, baying for blood. And yeah, it's hugely disappointing because Marseille made such a good start to the season, and it just seems like the wheels have started to come off ever since that narrow defeat to PSG at Parc des Princes in Le Classique. And now you've had this sort of groundswell of support for Tudor, this sort of realization that, maybe he knows what he's doing. Maybe these new ideas are actually going to lead us to a different level. And now people are sort of starting to second guess, to question, whether what Tudor has been doing this season is actually working, given that the results have now started to take a bit of a hit. And that's why I'm saying, when you look at the domestic situation, if Marseille drop out of Europe, which is realistic if this game goes as we expect it to, that will be an absolute disaster for the club.
Wait, JJ, did you just say as we expect it to? So that means you're going against Marseille. I like you said that, James, right?
I mean, I want Marseille to do it for French football. Do I think that you guys are talking logic? Unfortunately, yes, especially in the case of Nigel.
Don't ever say that. When you're talking about Nigel Reo-Coker, don't ever say those words ever again, JJ. That's not okay. All right, before we get into it, got a couple of comments coming in. Rafa says Tottenham and Sporting going through the knockouts. Oscar says Sporting and Marseille are going through the knockouts. What says you, James Bench? Who goes through?
Tottenham and Sporting. Tottenham and Sporting.
Nigel.
Tottenham and Sporting. Speaking with common sense. Oscar needs to have a coffee or something.
JJ.
I really want Marseille to go through, and that is very foreign to me as a concept. But I'm going to go Spurs and Frankfurt.
Frankfurt to get the win against Sporting Lisbon away from home. JJ, before we move on from this group, explain yourself real quickly.
Yeah, I just feel that something crazy is going to happen in one of these 2 games, and unfortunately, I can't see it happening in Marseille. So I'm going to go for Frankfurt managing to get out of the group.
No, I'm not having that. JJ is a bit of what's going on in society right now. People trying to reinvent the wheel when it's just there in your face. The answer's there, the proof is there, everything is there in your face, but you're just going to try and reinvent the wheel and say that Frankfurt are going to get a win at Sport. It could happen. I'm not going to say it couldn't happen, but realistically, come on.
Yeah, but then every time that you've told us something couldn't happen, it then does happen. Like, Celtic can't score a goal. But they did, and they nearly won
but I'm
game.
still top of the table anyway. I'm still top of the table. Well,
joint fourth you are, Nigel. Joint fourth in the prediction.
I love you saying fourth, but it says second on my name. Right, don't worry about it.
Just letting you know, joint fourth. Great stuff on
fighting for the top 4 at last, Nigel.
Shots fired. Okay.
I think that Tottenham go through, and I think Sporting Lisbon go through as much as I'd really like to see Eintracht Frankfurt get the job done. Just think it's too much of a task away from home. I watched them at the weekend against Borussia Dortmund, Frankfurt. They were good. They probably should have got more from that game. They didn't, and that's what I think this game is going to be like. Dortmund won. Jude was fantastic in that game, Nigel. Absolutely fantastic. Let's move on to Group A. Pretty much done and dusted in this one. Napoli sitting top of the group with 15 points. Liverpool on 12 points. Both teams already qualified. Shocking campaign from Ajax Amsterdam. They sit on 3 points. Even worse campaign, as James Bench pointed out at the top of the show, for Glasgow Rangers. Let's discuss Liverpool against Napoli. Can Liverpool be the first team to beat this Napoli side? Nigel, I'm going to ask you that one because you're a big fan of Napoli. They cannot beat at Anfield. You don't think they can beat Napoli?
There's problems at Liverpool. Just like how you used to say about Bayern Munich, they're not going to qualify and get it through. I never took it as far as you, but there is problems at Liverpool for sure. And and again, people want to try and figure out what's wrong. There's so much going on right now. I think for me, the players, I'll still say again, the players look tired. I think that they're missing Mane is one of the big things as well. And there just seems to be just a lack of energy and enthusiasm. I think they've done it at such a high level for those years that we've seen and witnessed great and amazing football, team football that we haven't seen for so long. It was so fascinating. And now it's just kind of died down. It's fizzled out. Whether it means you change the manager or whether it means you change the big core of that team for something fresh and a new, fresh environment. But there's something definitely wrong. And again, I look at Darwin Núñez for me. I don't feel he's going to live up to what people maybe think is going to be that top striker for Liverpool. I know there's an element of time to bed someone in and get him into it, but some of the chances and opportunities he's missing in the Premier League for me, that's not good enough when you spend that kind of money for a striker. If you really want to be critical, you really needs to be taking some of these chances. He doesn't look fully sharp and integrated as he should be, and being at Liverpool. And again, on the other hand, you look at his team, he's come from Benfica. They haven't missed a beat. They're fine. They're doing well. They're performing great in the Champions League again. So I just feel that there's things wrong at Liverpool, and it doesn't help as well now when even Trent Alexander-Arnold is coming out and say, you know what, something's not quite right here.
When you say drastic changes, though, before James, you jump in now, what do you mean by drastic changes? You talking about like firing Klopp, or what are you talking about?
I didn't say fire Klopp. You're trying to put words in my mouth.
No, I'm just saying you said drastic changes.
Okay,
so like,
yes, it has to be something drastic a bit, because now they're even getting bullied by Leeds United. I mean, if anyone caught the game there, it was a great game of football, and Leeds didn't show no fear. And I think a lot of teams in the Premier League can use that blueprint to go against. Confidence is low. You could see the confidence low in the Liverpool players by body language. And I don't know if you two have paid attention to this as well. In the great times of Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool, when they were just unbelievable to watch, how many times did you guys see players pointing at each other when things were going wrong or when they were under cosh? Never. Now, every time something goes wrong in attack against Liverpool, you're seeing Van Dijk point over there, Gomez point there. They're all pointing at each other. And we never used to see that when things were going right at Liverpool. So as you can see, the pressure is getting onto the players now. The nervousness is getting onto the players, because players only do that when they're nervous and not kind of knowing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's not good. So for me, it's either you say, you know what, Jurgen Klopp's tenure at Liverpool's come to an end. It's time we move on. Or you're going to have to change that whole team again and say, you know what, rebuild completely. Because sometimes I've said it becomes like white noise, and you know it as well. But I've also said on this pod before, the modern game has moved on. If people think you're going to get another Alex Ferguson or Arsene Wenger sitting at a club for 20 years or so, it's not happening. So now you have to look at managers the same way you look at players. That's my opinion.
On the subject of finger pointing, I'm going to put this question to you guys, and I'll start with James. Who do Liverpool really miss more? Do they miss Michael Edwards more, or do they miss Sadio Mane more? Because for me, I think Liverpool made strategic errors in the summer. Like, yes, you know, we all recognize that they needed to replace Mane in attack, but there were other areas of the squad which were overlooked, which was reflected by the panic late on in the transfer window of going for Arthur Melo. For me, I think that Liverpool are now, we can actually question, you know, whether they are sort of as well run strategically as they have been in the past, because at the end of the day, that's going to be key to, you know, the longevity of Klopp's spell at Anfield. And for me, I feel like it's much deeper, much more profound than, you know, just Sadio Mane being taken out of this team.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, JJ. I think that's a really interesting point. But I think we have to remember that this it didn't all start going wrong. You know, the seeds weren't sown this summer. I mean, you know, take that midfield, which looks so old, so slow, so heavy-legged. Part of the reason for that is Thiago's the only player that they've added in that position since 2018. You know, they didn't clear out, you know, players like Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Naby Keita, to be frank, still on the books, but Jurgen Klopp doesn't trust them. You know, they've indulged in centre-back signings. They have 4, you know, I mean, Joe Gomez has really struggled, but because he's partly, I think he struggled because he's never really played after the injury because they built so many options there. Like you say, you know, the recruitment issues go back a little bit further, and we do always rightly praise the Jota signings, the Diaz's as well. But I think it's gone from hit to a bit more hit and miss. You know, finally, just to wrap up on what Nigel was saying, I think when last time we were talking about Liverpool in crisis 2 years ago, it was really obvious what it was, and why Jurgen Klopp couldn't fix it. He had no good defenders. It was a Champions League team with a championship pairing at centre-back. And I think the challenge right now is this is much more existential. This is, the players hearing the messages anymore. Is this team just tired together? And I can't sit here and tell you I know what the answers are, because I'm not sure many people associated with Liverpool know how to pull out of this tailspin.
Can I get a quick prediction from you guys on this game? Nigel, you're obviously going for a Napoli win, yeah?
I'd definitely go for a Napoli win. You got to look at, I think, listen, players at Napoli know what's at stake. You're playing at Anfield. There's going to be so many scouts there. Quicha, Qualascalia, Osman, who's been linked with Manchester United. What are you laughing for? That's a great pronunciation. Anyway, there's going to be Napoli players who are going to want to put themselves on that shop window for getting a move to the Premier League. I'm going for a Napoli 3-1 win.
JJ?
I'm going to stick on the 4-goal theme, but I'm going to say 2-2. I think it's going to be one of those crazy European nights at Anfield, and that will secure Napoli top spot.
James?
Yeah, I think Napoli are winning this 2-0.
I'm going against all of you. I'm going for a Liverpool win today. I've bet against Napoli 4 or 5 times and I've been slapped in the face, but I might as well. I'm at the bottom of the table. If you're all going for a Napoli win, I need to get a point back somewhere, so I'm going to have to go for a Liverpool win.
You're going to go for a Rangers win as well, just for the hell of it?
Yeah, go for a Rangers win too.
Yeah. Kai the new. I'm going to go for that one there. Real quickly, Oscar says, Thomas Tuchel to Liverpool. James Bench, thoughts on that one? No chance?
No.
Based on what logic that Tuchel occasionally follows Klopp into like his former jobs?
Based that he's actually German, following another German. Before we move on from this game, obviously the World Cup's right around the corner. I mean, which team in the Champions League could potentially benefit from that World Cup taking place in the middle of the season? I mean, I'm looking at Liverpool. Obviously, they need to do some work. They probably could do with a break. Doesn't look like a lot of players are going to get a break from that Liverpool team, but maybe away from each other, a chance for Klopp to also refresh himself and then come back on Boxing Day and really get after the Premier League and also the Champions League as well. Liverpool's still very much in this. You can't rule them out from potentially getting into a top 4, and you can't rule them out from doing damage in the Champions League, especially if they upgrade in the winter transfer window.
I can rule them out from being top 4 finish in the Premier League this year.
No chance
I'm
for you.
Put my neck on the line. I don't think they'll finish in the top 4 this year in the Premier League. I'll tell you that now.
I don't think you're the only one that thinks like that. But James, who's going to benefit really? Is it going to be a team like Liverpool who benefits from this?
I'm glad I got to answer this first, because I think the answer is quite obvious. I think it's Napoli. Osimhen not going to the World Cup. Kvaratskhelia not going to the World Cup. They're Italian players not going to the World Cup. I think a lot of the other sort of players that will be. I think Zambo Anguissa will be going. I think Kim Min-jae will be going, but I don't think that they'll be going for long. Someone throw out any. I mean, well, South Korea are probably not getting out of their group, are they? Cameroon probably not getting out of their
half
group.
empty, James. Jesus
No, but
Christ.
this is great for Napoli. It's fantastic. Like, get them all back home nice and quick. Get them back before December, before they can open up their advent calendars. That's what you want. Yeah, I think that. I mean, I suppose you could say the same thing for AC Milan or anyone with a big Italian contingent as well, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Is there not an argument? Is there not an argument for City as well with Haaland?
Well, but then they have sort of the sizable Portuguese. I mean, it depends what you think Portugal will do, because I think they're, in spite of themselves, they're going to go quite far.
Early exit.
I'm with James. Everything James said, I don't even need to add to that, because that's the team I was going to pick as well, Napoli. I think they'll benefit.
Do you not think that this bubble will burst at some point, Nigel? I mean, obviously they've done so successfully well. They're probably the most entertaining, fun, enjoyable team to watch across all of Europe right now. But they are a team that nobody was talking about. So there was zero pressure coming on them in the season. They are a terrific team. But don't you think that bubble is going to burst at some point domestically and also in Europe? They're dealing with a lot. Is the squad deep enough? I'm not sure it is.
Nope. I think for me, this is the perfect time. Again, we've said it before. We've never had a World Cup during winter. First World Cup in winter. I think this last week of games is coming. These players are going to get to stay, work at the club. Just exactly what, like James stated, the main core players that they need are getting a rest through winter, and it's not your regular winter season domestically. So I just don't think so. I think they'll start up again. And the reality of it is, you can say something very similar about a club that's so close and dear to James's heart, called the Arsenal, because it's going to be a similar situation at the Arsenal where they get that break. And if they can stay in the top of the Premier League, then you can say that Arsenal probably could still really compete all the way to the end to win the Premier League title.
Quick prediction on Rangers against Ajax, James Bench.
Rangers against Ajax.
Yep.
Ajax will win that 2-0.
Nige.
Ajax 3-0.
JJ.
Yeah, hard to disagree. Something to know.
We move ahead to Group B. It is obviously one that is looking very good for Brugge and Porto right now. Both of the teams qualified. Brugge on 10 points, Porto on the 9 points. Atletico Madrid sitting on the 5 points, Leverkusen on 4 points. Porto against Atleti, Leverkusen against Brugge. A little bit of a battle to get into that Europa League. I guess the question would be more so than predictions real quickly. Who finishes third in that group, James, and who finishes top in that group?
Yeah, Atletico Madrid for third, just because Leverkusen have been pretty rubbish this season. So you kind of fancy them. I think Porto, I think Leverkusen might get a point. I don't know. I'm struggling a little bit here. Yeah. Basically, I think Porto might well end up top in the group, though. And I think there's a huge, huge value in doing that when you look at some kind of quite ordinary second-place teams and avoiding the likes of City, PSG, Real Madrid, Bayern. I mean, there's going to be a real scrap. It's worth coming top of your group if you can do that.
You don't think that Club Brugge or Brugge, as Ian likes to say, have more of an emphasis talking to that young squad about the importance of finishing top? It's already been a fantastic campaign for them so far. There's a big bonus when you finish top. So I think there'll be a greater desire by Club Brugge to want to finish top and avoid another top seed in the next round. So I think so.
But also at the same time, Leverkusen are kind of playing for their season, at least in the European sense, because if they can get the win, it has to be a win, really. I think, they can salvage something and give themselves a shot at the Europa League. And, Brugge didn't look that great against Porto afterwards. That's why, if I was to answer that question, I'd say I fancy Porto for top.
They weren't that bad. Those penalties.
We should say
they weren't that bad.
We should say actually only needs to be a draw for Leverkusen. If Leverkusen draw and Porto win, then Leverkusen will get Europa League. Because
I'm not so sure, James, that it would be a good thing for Xabi Alonso and Leverkusen. If you look at their table position, realistically, I'm not so sure that realistically, with the position that they're in right now, they should be in European competition. I'd probably prefer for them to be out of Europe altogether and completely focused on what they can do.
But is that what the fans would want? Just throw in the towel?
I don't
know.
Atletico
Madrid have thrown in the towel anyway, so.
All right, producer Des is moving us on here. Doesn't want to touch about Atletico Madrid. Clearly upset about them at the weekend. Clearly upset about their position in Group B. Let's move ahead to Group C before we get out of here. Bayern Munich top of the table. There's something clearly wrong there. 15 points, which is a maximum for them. Inter Milan sitting on 10 points. Both teams qualified. Barcelona 4 points, and Victoria Pilsen, as James Bench mentioned at the top of the show, having an absolute shocker on the 0 points. Bayern against Inter. Pilsen against Barcelona. Bayern against Inter. Real quickly, give me a prediction. What gives in this game, JJ?
Is this going to be like Bayern versus Inter B teams?
No.
This one could go either way. I expect Bayern to still have too much for Inter, home advantage and all of that. And plus, to make more of a mockery of your crisis prediction.
James?
Yeah, I think Bayern will quite fancy ending it on 18 points. I think they're going to have a little bit more motivation for this than Inter, who know that the job's done, really. So I think they'll win this quite comfortably.
Nigel?
Bayern Munich win. And then obviously Barcelona win. And you know what it's like. I've said it before. I think that there's an element that people have to understand. Yes, Bayern are comfortably through. And I think people might think, they're going to arrest it and change it. No, there's that element of the so-called big clubs in Europe wanting to continue to embarrass each other. So I think Bayern will still play a strong team, wanting to prove a point, and they'll want to beat one of the other big clubs in European football, which is Inter Milan.
Nigel, just before we head to break here, we got a comment coming in from Rafa. He says, Nigel, could you please tell me the name of that Georgian player once again?
Kvaratskhelia. How about that, Rafa?
That was pretty good, Nigel Rio Coco. Love it. All right, lads, let's take a quick break. But when we return, we'll take a look at Wednesday's delightful fixtures. Some crackers to look forward to. You are watching House of Champions. We'll be right back.
The UEFA Champions League. 9 months of heart-stopping, hold-your-breath exhilaration. While Mbappe shines in the city of lights, Benzema's racking up the hat tricks, and the Reds want more magic in Liverpool. This ain't amateur hour. This is the best of the best of the best. This is the UEFA Champions League. Stream every match live on Paramount+.
Just a quick question for you. Are you looking for a month free Paramount Plus action? If you are, P Plus have a 1 month free trial. Offer code UEFA 2022 or UEFA 22. Scan the QR code on your screen or follow the link in the description. Make sure you get yourself a month free Paramount Plus action. It's not just the Champions League, a whole host of soccer, football, foosball action, whatever it may be, le foot. You got a lot to look forward to on Paramount Plus. So grab your 1 month free by using UEFA 22 or scan the QR code or potentially click on the link in the description. You're watching House of Champions. It's Ian Joy previewing this week's Champions League actions with my boys James Bench, Nigel Rio-Coker and Jonathan Johnson. As we turn our attention to Wednesday's games, let's take a look at Group E. The question will be, who's going to finish second in this group? Chelsea, 10 points, qualified. AC Milan, 7 points. Salzburg, 6 points. Dinamo Zagreb out with 4 points. Dinamo Zagreb travel to London to play Chelsea. AC Milan against Salzburg. That is second against third in this group. Nigel Rio-Coker, who goes through into second?
I will think I'm going to put my money on AC Milan. I know Salzburg have been doing fantastically well, but I'm still going to put my money on AC Milan to get the job done. I know they lost this weekend. It wasn't very convincing Milan performance again, kind of very similar to how they performed against Chelsea in the domestic league. But Chelsea also lost this weekend as well, Chelsea got battered this weekend by Brighton. But you'd still expect them to get the job done. And I'm still going to go with Chelsea to go through and AC Milan to go through.
Yeah, I mean, that Milan one's interesting. It sort of feels like Leao is blowing hot and cold. When he's hot, there you absolutely, hands down, they're going to win this. But don't forget, if he's not on form, like Salzburg have 2 young forwards in Adamu and Okafor, who have been on form all the way through. I think just because Milan can afford the draw, I mean, partly, I'm sure you guys will agree, it's a bit more difficult to manage a game when you know you can get away with a draw. That's certainly true. Equally, they can get away with a draw. That's why I kind of favour them. But I don't trust this young team. We've spoken about this before. Because they're young, a lot of these experiences are new for them. So I don't trust them to make it easy for themselves, even if I think they'll get the job done.
Yeah, I think the temptation is to go for a pair of home wins in this group, even if, there is an argument to say that Salzburg could give Milan a tough time. And obviously not a great result for Milan coming into this one, losing against Torino over the weekend. But I think they've got just about enough in the tank, to be able to see this out, whether that's a draw, whether that's by a narrow win. I think that Milan will go through, and I don't really fancy Dinamo, to repeat their feat earlier on in the group stage of beating Chelsea.
Question for you guys, though. Do you not feel that sometimes when it gets to these kind of scenarios, that these bigger clubs, because of the history that they've got in the competition and history they've got in the league domestically, do you not feel that it suits them more, that they know what's at stake? And then generally, unless they're doing a complete rebuild, the players that they have in these clubs are used to this kind of pressure. I mean, when you talk about it recently, the only club that I would say that's come in there with a bit of an FU attitude, even though they're not in the Champions League this year, is Atalanta, where people probably didn't respect, but they've gone and got results and been absolutely fascinating to watch. But do you not feel so?
I feel like for this Milan team, they're a little bit more likely to freeze, actually, I think. And we sort of saw that in last season's Champions League, where they played quite well to not get far at all. Salzburg, as well, as we know, they are a team that they probably have more of the institutional experience, even if they're losing players left, right, and centre. They are used to these games. Obviously, they got through to the last 16 last year, and I think the year before it came down to the final game, I want to say against Atletico Madrid, but it was certainly in Atleti's group. This is probably a club in Salzburg that are a little bit more used to dealing with the pressure of this final game. But like you say, I think with AC Milan, the expectation is there. I remember talking to Fikayo Tomori, who was like, guys, we play for AC Milan. The expectation isn't to get out of the group, it's to win the thing. Yeah. Obviously, no one thinks they'll do that. But, there's that pressure on them. That's all those things add together do make me inch towards Salzburg, even while I still kind of think Milan will get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well with Milan, they're kind of rebuilding that club culture because, as Tomori said, AC Milan for years and years, decades even, they were giants of the European game. When we grew up, they were one of the biggest names in the game. And then, they had that sort of lean spell of 10 years, and now they're coming back into it. into the new style of European football, and they're no longer among those favorites. Whereas Salzburg, yes, okay, they're not fancied amongst the really hot favorites, but they've been sort of used to being in these difficult situations, the group stage, so often. They now know sort of when they can dig out a performance, when to capitalize on some of these clubs who are perhaps feeling the pressure a little more. And I agree with James. I do think that there is kind of that nagging argument that Milan might be haunted by what happened last year, and the fact that they've not really managed to push on in terms of the results so far this year. Either that, or it really will motivate them to just go out and really try and kill the game as early as possible. But I think there's more to this Salzburg side, than one that will just crumble and drop to a 3-4 goal defeat.
Ian, with the help of our producer Des, I don't know, what's your thoughts on the potentially 3 or 4 Italian teams making it through, and then what is it? Only one Spanish team made it through?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see the domestic leagues happening like that, and especially the Italian teams. I mean, I can't remember the last time you're seeing this type of success from Italian teams, more than maybe 1 or 2 teams getting to the knockout stage and having success. Napoli have been the biggest surprise for me out of all of the teams. Inter and Milan both sort of just going about business. We haven't seen the best of either of those clubs in the Champions League, and the fact that they're pretty much through to the knockout stages, I think Milan will get there as well. It bodes well for Italian football in general, but it also says watch out for Milan and Inter when it does get to the knockout stages, because you would imagine them to really start to kick in. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the transfer windows with both of those clubs as well, whether they try to strengthen. But the surprise has been absolutely what happened to Napoli, coming from nowhere, where they've sold some obviously experienced players and tremendous players and produced this type of product, which is so fun to watch, so enjoyable, so dominant, so dangerous. I mean, like I've said it before so many times, most enjoyable team to watch in Europe right now is Napoli. And then there's also the desperate situation from a Juve, which is, as you were touching upon this point of this big institution that's so familiar to having success in the Champions League, having such a failure is an embarrassment for a club like Juve. So realistically, Italian football is in good shape with 3 clubs going through potentially to the knockouts. But when you see a club the size and the attitude like Juventus getting knocked out at this stage in the fashion that they are getting knocked out, I don't think is good for Italian football. I don't think it's good for Juve. They've been laughed at a lot. And I'm actually surprised there's not more noise from Juve fans. It's almost as if they're just accepting this situation. So
I still
in
think
both ways, looks good and bad.
You still rather be in the Italian boat than the Spanish boat right about now. When you talk about the magnitude of Barcelona not making it through and only Real Madrid being the only representation for Spanish football, because there's that element of competitiveness nationally, so to speak, of
what do you think about the La Liga right now, though, Nigel? That's the question. And
it's not competitive. It's not that great. It's not that great, really and true. Let's be realistic.
You wouldn't turn on a fourth versus fifth La Liga game.
Yeah, you wouldn't. It's not.
I would, because it's most likely Betis.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, there are a few teams that you wouldn't mind watching. Real Madrid, obviously, I watched their game at the weekend. It was a disappointing game, disappointing result. But Betis are fun to watch. There are 2 or 3 teams that probably lower down that I enjoy watching as well. But
I do get the sentiment, though. I mean, I feel like it's almost like by default that somebody like Atleti are kind of wedged in there as third between like the other good teams, and the really top teams, the Reals and Barças, and I do think it is embarrassing what's happened with Barca this season, because given the quality in their squad, yes, we know that, Rome wasn't built in a day, but they really should have been getting out of that group stage.
Well, pretty much talking about Real Madrid anyway. Let's move on to Group F. Top spot is still up for grabs. Real Madrid were beaten by Leipzig last game on matchday 5. They are at home to Glasgow Celtic. Shakhtar at home to Leipzig. Obviously, the top spot still up for grabs here in this group. What do you see happening, James? I mean, do you see Celtic getting a majestic win at the Bernabeu?
No, of course not.
Not even a draw like Girona?
No. You know how angry Real Madrid are right now from this weekend's result as well.
Yeah, exactly. They're coming in hot with a point to prove. And I know he's sort of saying here top spots up for grabs. I'm not too worried about Madrid claiming it quite quickly, even if it's their B team or whatever Carlo Ancelotti looks to put out. I mean, this has been a little bit of a mini wobble, hasn't it? But now is probably quite a good time to have that. You're still top of La Liga. You're still probably going to top your Champions League group. So, yeah, get your wobble out of the way. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Shakhtar can still also can they still qualify? I'm right there, and
they can.
And I think that's the game to keep an eye on. Leipzig have definitely taken a little bit of an upturn in form under Marco Rose, but there's something about Shakhtar, isn't there? Maybe it's all, just everything that's happening and has happened in that country this year. It makes you want to believe. But also, it's also true that they have some super talented footballers who could win this game for them, whatever the circumstances. But
just going to say this: not if you're a German football fan, do you want Leipzig to lose? Although,
well, it depends what part of Germany you're from. Well, wait a minute. I thought if you were any German football fan other than a Leipzig fan,
don't trust Ian. He's got his Scottish passport on the table today. Don't listen to Ian.
Don't you want energy drink conglomerates?
Don't listen to him.
Can I just say, I gotta add. Hold on, Nigel. Hold on.
James,
go on,
don't trust a man that says there's something wrong at Bayern Munich. I don't think they're going to make out the group stages. You're going to ask him about German football when he says that about Bayern Munich. Come on.
I'm talking about a Leipzig side right now that haven't lost in about 10 games, and under new boss Marco Rose are playing fun, enjoyable football. He's starting to get the best out of Timo Werner, which didn't think we would say for a long time. Obviously, want to see the best from Christopher Nkunku, which potentially could be sold for hundreds of millions of euros. There is the prediction list right now we've been talking about from everybody out there. Thanks to producer Des for throwing it in here. He's getting a slap from me the next time I see him, probably the next destination.
Let the fans know.
Well, hold on a minute though. I just want. Why are you second? Why are you second? You should be fourth in this list.
Still the same. No, why you want to put me in the bottom? No, still the same, mate. JJ only got better because JJ hung out with me a lot and picked my brain on football.
Absolute garbage.
He hung out with me a lot.
All right, let's get to our predictions for this one. Real Madrid against Celtic, Shakhtar against Donetsk. James, you go first.
Yeah, Real Madrid win, and the heart wants what it wants. Shakhtar win as well.
Nigel.
Wow. Real Madrid win, and Leipzig win.
Oh, JJ, you're just down to you, man. Shakhtar, Leipzig.
Real win, Shakhtar, RB Leipzig draw.
Ooh, three different results.
Right, Ian, before you move on, just quickly, because it's Real Madrid. I just wanted to know on what roller coaster would you guys have liked to go on a story that's leaked out about potentially a Real Madrid land or world that the president kind of put out there to have. So there's roller coasters to represent Zinedine Zidane's volley. So what roller coaster would you have gone on?
It's got to be the Guti back heel assist, hasn't it? You know, the one where he just and you go flying.
You guys are laughing, but I'm sure there's a story out there. People go Google and have a look. There was potential talk about making a Real Madrid world or land with the stadium being in the middle of it. I think, Ian, you should have gone on Eden Hazard ride.
Yeah, thanks very much. What is that? The injury?
The one that just sits stationary for like 2 hours.
Are you making a laugh at my predictions again? Being bottom of the table, stationary for the last 5 match days? Don't worry, I've got a feeling that on match day 6, it's all about to turn around. There's a reason why I'm asking you all for your predictions here. Let's move on.
Jump on it.
Group G, Manchester City top with 11.
Our very own Spygate.
Manchester City top with 11 points. Borussia Dortmund on 8 points. Both teams already qualified. Sevilla sitting on 5 points. Copenhagen out and completely eliminated with the 2 points. Manchester City against Sevilla. Copenhagen against Borussia Dortmund this week. I guess we'll just ask for predictions before we move on here. City, obviously, looking to pick up maximum points regardless of who plays. I guess the question would be more than anything, does Erling Haaland play in this game? Is Erling Haaland okay? What are you hearing, James Bench?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to yet. I will certainly do some digging around because obviously this could have major ramifications on the title race as well. I mean, look, like what you cannot deny is that 5 rounds of games have been played in this group. I have nothing more to say on it than that. This has been. I know we're rights holders here. We've got to big up the product. I'm really glad we don't ever have to watch this group again after the end of this week.
No, but honestly, let's be real. The reality of it, James, is there's good clubs in there.
Yeah. It's just been a boring.
They just haven't performed.
Dortmund's broken in a boring way as well.
And Sevilla was a massive disappointment. They've sold players, obviously haven't really got it right, and to be able to reinvest for the Sevilla that we know about. But it's just been underwhelming because of the lack of participation by big clubs. And the two you say is Dortmund and Sevilla. But really and truly, it should have been a lot more of a competitive group than it was, because City don't look exactly completely dominating, in my opinion. I don't think they're like absolutely wow, fantastic City are head and shoulders above everyone else. It's just a lack of competitive edge from Dortmund and Sevilla is what I would say.
James, what does it say about UEFA's plan to then obviously extend the teams, the group stages and things like that? I mean, is this something that we should be looking to see more often when it comes to the group stage? If they do extend it, going to be more meaningless groups?
Yeah, you do worry about that a little bit, I have to say. I think there are, and like kind of as we're doing this preview, there are quite a lot of dead rubbers, and that's just natural. But what I wouldn't want to be doing is looking for more of them. Like, let's take for instance Barcelona. Bayern Munich against Inter Milan. On paper, that's a great game. That's the sort of game that the Super League and the Swiss system are built for. Let's have more games like that. None of us are going to be tuning into that because it's a football match without any real stakes. I'll check what the score was, but I'm not going to be following it. And I think you do have to be really careful that you have a system in place that has as much competitive play as possible. I mean, in an ideal world, this would be its most fun if it was straight knockout, 64 teams enter, one team leaves. And we all know the realities of the broadcasting world, why that's not an ideal solution anymore. But I think we kind of need to reserve a little bit of judgment until we see it in action. But everyone that's saying this new system might lead to more dead rubbers is right to be concerned. And I hope it isn't quite like that.
I think it's 2024 that they're looking to make that extension of the Champions League. So I'm agreeing with you 100%. I think I'm really bit disappointed. I remember when the Champions League used to be just the champions going into this competition, and it was just a crazy. Every single game was on a knife edge. Every single game meant something. There were some of the best games that you witnessed ever. I actually watched a great Marseille team play against Rangers back in the day, JJ. It was when Rangers were in with Juve, Marseille. Marseille had such an unbelievable team.
When Marseille used to win titles.
When they used to win titles and challenge for Champions League trophies, yes, back in the day. Tells you how old I am as well.
Didier was there, right? At them times
yep.
as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice. Some great players, though, came through the ranks. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Drogba was later in the UEFA Cup, I think, when they had that run.
Yes.
Did they come across Newcastle in that, I think?
Yeah.
Can't remember that one.
Anyway,
we're getting off topic. Let's get to Group H before we wrap up this show. PSG, JJ sitting top of the table with 11 points. Benfica also on the 11 points. Juve miserable with 3 points, as are Maccabi Haifa also sitting on 3 points. Juve against PSG, I guess, going to the point we were just talking about. I mean, these are two heavyweights going head to head against each other. What do you see happening in this game? Obviously, PSG flying. Juve at home against PSG. It'll be interesting.
I mean, this one, I think Juve will try to give it everything they can to avoid the potential embarrassment of finishing bottom of the group. But the sobering reality is that is a very real possibility coming into this one. I mean, if Benfica rotate their players for, let's face it, what is one of the tougher trips, in this group, going to Israel. Not only is it taxing in terms of the travel, but, it's also a very hostile atmosphere as well. We saw PSG do quite well to get away with a 3-1 win when the game was, fairly tight. Haifa have already beaten Juve there. So for me, I think that Juve, they really need to win this, and I don't see any way for them to do that. I think PSG will remain unbeaten. They go there. They've no Neymar, but they probably won't really need him. I think that they can get the draw, stay unbeaten. But Juve, anything other than a win really, really puts them in a dangerous situation.
James, what are you thinking about this game? Strange one.
Look, Juventus back to winning ways. What was it? 1-0 away to Lecce.
Great goal. Fagioli. Great goal.
Fantastic. And I mean, that was quite a heavily rotated team as well, wasn't it? The likes of, Milik was up front, no Vlahovic, pretty ordinary midfield. Prayers out for Weston McKennie, who has apparently a rectus injury or something like that, which I don't want to know any more about. And I'm sorry to our listeners that I've made them think
Nigel
about that.
Can tell you more about that. What is it, Nigel?
He said we'd injured one of them for years. Part of me just wonders if I feel like PSG might take their foot off the gas. Juventus might feel like no, I can't do it.
It could go one of two ways. I think could also get really brutal for Juve.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it's going to be. I personally feel
best hope is that Benfica do them a favour, and I think even if it's Benfica B, this team's playing so well that they could well go to Haifa and get the win. But I've got no hope. No hope for
Listen,
no hope for
Benfica
Juventus
win,
at all.
Paris Saint-Germain win. And Paris Saint-Germain, it comes with the element of boastfulness in the sense of they can humiliate Juventus, a team that's won this competition, while Paris Saint-Germain are still trying to win it. They're going to want to humiliate Juventus. They're not going to want to do Juventus any favor. They want to let their name be known in the dominance of world football. They want to put themselves out there. It's going to be a statement win. They're going to want to really continue to kick Juve while they're on the ground. They're not going to want to do them any favors. And I think that's a message that's going to come from up top, because these owners were sitting watching Juventus, watching all these clubs be built to become European champions. They're trying to do the same thing. There's nothing going to please them more than absolutely embarrassing Juventus. I think it's going to be a Paris Saint-Germain win, and they're going to truly embarrass Juventus.
JJ, I see your face there. You're almost looking like you're wanting to say this could be a draw in this game or something like this. But I guess most importantly, like, where are PSG right now? What have we seen from Paris Saint-Germain? Because when I watch them, I want to see 100%. I want to see them just firing on all cylinders. But I feel like we've only ever seen 65% of what PSG are capable of. Am I wrong?
And I don't think we've seen the final finished product just yet. I do think there's some way to go. I just saw that comment there. Neymar won't be there in Turin, so it'll be Mbappe and Messi up against the Juve defense. But I think that there are still big areas where work is needed. I saw them ship 3 goals at home to Troyes on the weekend. Very underrated Troyes side, I might add. And it feels like defensively, PSG are not there yet. I know that Peter Schmeichel was talking about that in Destination Brooklyn as well. But in attack, PSG are always, with the kind of players like your Mbappes, like your Messis, like your Neymars, they're always going to have the ability to turn it on. The big question, I think, for Galtier is, can he find that defensive solidity that they really, really need this time around? And also, can he get that midfield functioning where they can connect, the attack with the rest of the team? So, I think that the jury is still going to be out on this PSG side until the latter stages. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see what comes up in the draw for them. But, I think we've only seen very brief glimpses of what this PSG side can really do under Galtier. And I do think that there is still, much room for improvement. And as we know, it takes PSG drawing a really, really big team to get them to bring their best performances to the table. And sometimes, they can't manage to do that over 2 legs.
JJ, quick question for you. If you look at this PSG team, like you said right now, there's kind of a lot still going on around it, right? So if you were there, obviously you're there watching them, but I mean, if you were there involved in the club, what would you do with that front 3 that's capable of basically destroying any world team's defense and getting the goals? Defensively, I agree with you, they're not there. They're lacking. Would you now say, this is our best bit, let's gamble it? Would you recruit and get defenders in during this indifferent break we're going to have with the World Cup? Would you strengthen that defense and go and sign some players and really go for it to win the Champions League? Because there's already rumors coming out now about Barcelona wanting to be very aggressive to try and bring Messi back after the World Cup. So what would you do?
I think PSG definitely need to look at the situation in defense. Really, I think they really should have been able to find some alternatives to Skriniar in the summer. I don't understand why they were so focused on him. At the end of the day, when you got someone like Luis Campos in, a transfer guru, he should have been able to identify sort of more affordable alternatives. But also at the same time, if you are really that convinced by one player, being sort of the solution to your problems, then I guess some people would argue it's better to be patient. And now PSG are potentially entering into that January window, not knowing if Skriniar's contract will be extended or not. If it's not, then there's potentially the opportunity for them to, either snap him up as a free agent ahead of next summer, or maybe strike a deal, bring him in January, or find somebody else entirely. And hopefully Campos has been sensible with his time off since the summer transfer window and has identified some targets, because defensively, PSG at this moment in time, they are not going to win the Champions League with that defense as is.
Statement right there from Jonathan Johnson. Like to hear it. Group H is about to wrap up. Match day 6. James bench. PSG 11 points. Benfica 11 points. How does it end? Who finishes top of the group?
PSG top of the group. Benfica second, but both of them win.
Nigel?
What James just said.
Okay, JJ, prediction, Juve, PSG. I've still got that feeling that you're going for a draw in that game. Go ahead.
Yep, going for a draw in that game, and I'm going to go for a Haifa Benfica draw, which I think means it will end up finishing as is. So that's PSG top, Benfica second, and Juve just about scraping third.
Just a question.
Wow.
How many draws have we actually seen in this Champions League and all these games? We haven't seen that many draws.
Not a lot.
I keep predicting draws and looking like a fool.
That's why you don't listen to JJ, right? You're right, James.
Well, Rodrigo Melo says that Benfica will win, as you just saw on the screen, and Juve will draw, and that means that Benfica will finish top of the group. I'm intrigued to see how this group actually does finish. Obviously, we appreciate everybody.
It's funny, actually, on that point, you said we haven't seen that many draws, and we absolutely slammed Group G. Do you know how many draws we've had in that group? 3. Do you know what score they were? They were all 0-0.
Yeah, City as well. Copenhagen keep having 0-0 draws against everyone. That's to James Bench's point right there. Nobody wants to watch that group anymore.
City have also drawn 2-0. City and Copenhagen, guilty parties.
Last two. Yeah, the last two. But we'll see how it ends up. Great stuff as always. Nice question came in there, or comment came in from Ali A saying, thoughts on Messi to Inter Miami. Ali, please head over to our YouTube page. You can watch my conversation with Fabrizio Romano this morning. He touched upon exactly what he thought was going to happen between Messi and Inter Miami and potentially Barcelona as well. So make sure you go and check out our YouTube page as well.
Can I ask you two, as players that have played in the MLS, if Messi comes at, I mean, how much of a culture shock is this going to be for a player who has had teams built around him, played at the highest level? How much of a culture shock will life in the MLS be? And 2, what percent does he need to play at to be MVP?
James, it's not going to be a culture shock for him because he's going to be wrapped in cotton wool. It's a marketing move. He's going to fly privately everywhere while his team flies commercial. Like, they're going to protect.
Still going to be coached by Phil Neville.
Let's just say he's not even going to be coached. He's going to do what he wants. He's going to live in South Miami in the Porsche Tower, Porsche building. There's a big Argentinian community there. Like, he's going to feel right at home. And football's not going to be taken very seriously. If I'm honest, it's very similar to when David Beckham came in. It's all marketing and money. That's just
what do you mean it won't be taken seriously though? Messi going to MLS. You think he's just gonna come and just chill, smoke one of your cigars,
like a lot
and relax?
I'm sorry, wasn't there high anticipation for Gareth Bale coming over? Started off okay.
You're putting Gareth Bale into the same bracket as Lionel Messi coming to Miami.
I'm saying this is what happens when players who've had top careers in Europe come over here. And
I'm just going to say one name for you.
Well.
David Beckham went to LA Galaxy. What happened? Did he just mail it in?
He tried once or twice. He didn't play a lot of games here. And if you look at his stats, he won it like
everywhere else. Twice.
Oh,
he won the MLS Cup twice.
I'm not going to.
Or 3 times.
They did because they had the best team. They had the best.
But guys, put yourself in Messi's shoes. Who wouldn't want to play alongside the likes of Kieran Gibbs, Indiana Vasilev, Breck Shea?
Exactly. Listen, JJ, I'm being honest with you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, he's going to come here. He'll play a few games. And then what Ian doesn't understand is, let's be real. There's a lot of football players who would love to play against Messi. Their highlight of their career, if they could smash Messi, that's what they're going to go for. And there's a lot of players in the MLS who still go for some crazy challenge.
Jimmy Conrad still dines out on that.
Listen, I'm not saying anything anymore. It's just going to be a fun fest for Messi, but I don't think he's going to take it too seriously.
See that comment right there? Zlatan went to MLS and killed it. Nigel, he
did kill it, and he also said to go look at what Zlatan said about the MLS before you start telling about me.
But what did Zlatan actually win in MLS that's like his legacy?
Hearts and minds
over there. He didn't win the MLS Cup, I'll tell you that much.
He won over LA when you had to take an advertising board to say you're welcome LA, which is like, okay, yeah.
He was the night show specialist out in Los Angeles, joining every single night show. Listen, I agree with it. It's a marketing move. It would be fantastic for Major League Soccer if they manage to convince him Messi. He will make a ton of money here. He will really enjoy himself as much as he possibly can because it is Miami. Great city, probably one of the best in the United States of America. It's absolutely fantastic to see him even mentioned next to MLS, and I'd love to see it happen, but I think Barcelona will have something to say about that. Make sure you go check out my conversation with Fabrizio Romano, who also pointed out that Lorenzo Insigne, who went on to sign for Toronto, Nigel, could have gone to Borussia Dortmund. He chose to go to Toronto instead of going to Borussia Dortmund, which was really surprising to me. Boys, great stuff as always. I appreciate you. Fantastic stuff as always. I appreciate you. Look forward to catching up after the games on Tuesday and Wednesday. Make sure you also join in our conversation on those games. We'll be right on air as soon as the game's finished. There is obviously a time difference change now between the United States and Europe, so you guys enjoy the time change. We'll catch up with you next week or the week after. But a reminder to everybody out there, we appreciate you listening to House of Champions. Please make sure you take a minute to leave us a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere else you listen to your podcast. We're also available, unfortunately, for Nigel Reo-Coker on video. So subscribe to us on YouTube. Boys, love you all. I'll see you Tuesday and Wednesday. Enjoy the games. And everybody else out there, make sure you like and subscribe. And we'll see you Tuesday. Bye.